Welcome back to Hall of Fame College Football with Jason and the coach. I'm your host, Jason Watkins. The coach is out sick tonight, but we've got another coach with us, Jake Merrill from Set the Tone College Football. And if you love college football, you know you're in the right place. So before you forget, smash that red subscriber button, like our videos, and don't forget to ring the bell so you don't miss one moment of Hall of Fame College Football. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome into the show, Jake. Good to see you, my man. It's been a while.
I know, man. It's been a minute. It's nice to jump back in. First live back from vacation, everybody. Back from vacation. So Set the Tone gets to start bringing football back. I'm very, very excited for that. So pumped, man, because football season's right around the corner. Legitimately coming up. Very excited. Yes, it's going to be a good time. And I got content to roll out because fall ball's now over and we move into game prep for everybody.
Yeah.
Hank, what's going on? Rob, what's
Hey,
up? My dog. What's up, Rob? Missouri Rob. Hey, Rob, I don't know if you saw that comment I made on my own channel, but I was like, hey, Rob, I'm sorry for calling you Michigan Rob. Larry Large, L&L, what up, dog? I know, I made a big mistake because it's so little, But
yeah,
Hank,
good
good
to
to
see
see you,
everybody
man.
in here.
Kyle,
Just Ed, Sooner Cowboys,
up,
Kyle DeTweese, Rob
yeah,
from Mizzou, Rob from Mizzou, Hankster, Rhyming Lemon, and Larry Large.
Rhyming,
Welcome
what
to
up,
the
dog?
show, man. Excited to have all hey, look, we take on anybody who wants to come in. We enjoy having our Alabama friends come in and enjoy the show as well. Make sure you wipe your feet as you come in, though. But hey, Esther, good to see you. Make sure you wipe your feet as you come in. Hit that like button. Look, there's my boy Collins McDaniel as well. Thank you, everybody,
What up,
for
dog?
coming in. Yeah, as I said, hit that like button on your way in. Very important. Hit the subscribe button and jump over to Jake's show. Set the tone. Alabama college football. It's at Coach_J Murr right here on YouTube. It will pop that up actually on the little name tags.
Pop it up.
Yeah.
Ryan, my dog, good to see you, man. Good to see you. Esther, what's up? Kim K, yo. Yeah, Rob, block M's, bro. Block M's. And it's funny. You could block M me. My last name's Merrill, right? You'd think I would just get it right, but no, I can't. Collins, what's up, man? Sooner Cowboys. Yeah, it's good to see everybody jumping in, man. Yeah, jump to both channels. Throw us a what's up and a good like, please.
Thank you, Kimberly K. I'm sorry. We've definitely been going Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'll be on in the morning. So we'll be back out here to talk a little bit. Obviously, with Oklahoma, you have the commitment for Michael Fasusi is tomorrow. He's going to decide where he's going to school. All signs are pointing to Oklahoma, but until he makes the commitment and really until he gets that name on the paper, there's no guarantees in any of this. But it looks like Oklahoma all the way. Bill Bedenbaugh has done a great job. The staff has done a fantastic job, once again, of putting together the guys that they need to. We're excited to be able to do that. Esther's in here roll tiding as well.
Love it.
Hey, Coach I running a huge Georgia stream, so others may roll in late. Yeah, listen, we kind of overlap a little bit. He's always gone at I believe it's 6 or it's 8 o'clock Eastern time, and then we go at 8:30. But they run for an hour generally, and we run for however long. This is kind of how it rolls in here at Hall of Fame College Football. Again, missing the coach tonight. He was upset about it too. He said he's got COVID, he's real sick, not doing well at all. And he was like, man, we need to be talking college football because it is here. Boys, it is here. Week 0 is upon us. We are exactly about 9 days away from Oklahoma taking the field on Friday night against Temple. The next morning, it starts on Thursday next week as far as week 1 is concerned. Hey, man, we no longer have to just talk about crap. We can talk real ball. You brought something up earlier today when we were just talking, and I thought it was really a great topic, really. We got to talk about Courtney Morgan. He's, of course, the general manager of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Oklahoma they've both been right at the cutting edge of what's going on in NIL, hiring a general manager, getting out in front of it, knowing that, you are going to have revenue share coming along with that. It's a huge part of recruiting. And as we've seen, Courtney's made a big splash since he got to Alabama. The question has always been, is Kalen DeBoer going to be able to recruit the South? They're doing just fine. I mean, it's clear that they're doing just fine. But talk to me about what happened today with Courtney Morgan, and we'll get into some more of this stuff with obviously Curtis Lofton in the group with OU.
Yeah, man. I think it's cool, man. You see within the last, I guess really today, I mean, it comes out, but in general, you have Courtney Morgan, taking on this general manager role. I love the way that college football is looking at this now. They're saying, hey, because we're paying guys, because we're in this role, instead of putting it all on the head coach or your director of player personnel or your recruiting director, let's separate all this, and then let's also bring in another position that allows us to manage our time better. So we're hitting all aspects of recruiting, but also connection and relationship building. And you see that in Alabama. I mean, they really did it truthfully. Kalen DeBoer was able to see Dow. What's up, dog? Good to see you, man. You really see it pull over with Courtney Morgan. Like, right, he did it at Washington, did a phenomenal job at Washington. DeBoer was able to get him from Michigan, which was a huge grab. I mean, if you listen to those interviews with Courtney Morgan and what he really talks about. Scott, what's up, dog? Good to see you, man. Courtney really discusses, because Michigan's home for Courtney. Like, people don't really, like, he played for Michigan. Michigan is that team he loves, man. And it's interesting to see the fact that DeBoer is able to say, hey, man, I need you. We got this connection. Let's make it happen. He pulls Courtney over to Washington. Courtney follows him to Alabama, where he has made a significant impact year one with recruiting alone, and it was worth it, because now he has an increase in contract for 3 years at $825,000 a year. The market setting, definitely market setting, correct. And you would imagine that's the route that's going to happen with a lot of these major universities as they find more and more guys. I mean, you could go look at Oregon's guy right now, Malco, right? And forgive me, Marshall Malco, that's his name.
Marshall,
yeah, Marshall Malco. Goof, what's up, dog? Good to see you, man.
Guys?
Back from vacation, everybody. Back from vacation. We are in this. Hey, Coach Roybal, good to see you.
Coach,
good to see you. Listen, man. Hope you're feeling better.
Man, you feel better. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love your cowboy hat picture, man. You look like a boss. I just got back from Wyoming, saw a lot of those. But I'll tell you, Marshall Malco, you look what Oregon's doing recruiting wise. Marshall plays a huge role in that, right? Like, Marshall comes from he comes from like a unique, right? He's at Boise State. He gets to Alabama, helps Nick Saban a little bit, really makes an impact at Georgia, and then from there Texas A&M for like 2 years, and then to Oregon. Right, during his time, everywhere he goes, man, he makes a huge difference. Courtney Morgan's the same way. Kim Harmon, good to see you. Miss Kim, good to see you. Bishop Frank, what up, dog? So it's worth it, but it's crazy to see, the route that we're moving. And I say it's crazy because you're talking like, it's not crazy to see the structure that they're going about it with, right? Like, the structure makes sense. It makes sense you're doing this. But what is crazy is, like, man, you're going to start seeing some big numbers come up for general managers. It's a new competitive market, right? Boomer, yo, what up, Boom? Good to see you, man. Mars, what's up? Jimmy, what's going on? So, big numbers, though, Jason.
Yeah, listen, man, and he's definitely made his market, and I think it's kind of the same thing that we're seeing. Look, if you're not out in front of this is where you have the opportunity to get passed up, and you can't really afford to have any things. And look, let's just be honest with you. These coaches don't want to spend a bunch of time on it. They don't want to spend a bunch of time on it. They would rather recruit for the reasons of what they're doing. They want to bring in guys that can help their football program, period. And when it comes to like Venables, they don't want to have that conversation, because guess what? The less they know about it sometimes, and not that they don't know about it, but they don't need to know everything about the money, right? If it's not just about what the coach is doing and what they think about it, then this is a good thing. It's kind of like that separation from, I don't know, you kind of look at it in terms of to me, you just automatically, that's your kind of your buffer from having to worry about what's going on in the NAI. Now, any of these coaches that are worth their salt are going to make sure that they're doing things that's going to keep their culture together. But this is why having somebody that you can trust in that realm, that you know can do that negotiation and make that happen, knows what the numbers should be, knows whenever you're going to overpay. Look, if it's more about money, you're not aligned, and this is the truth. Oklahoma and Alabama, they got money. They may not have Texas money. They may not have A&M money. They may not have Oregon money, but they got money. It's not an issue. And they're going to stay at the front of that. But the point is, if Shotty said this a lot, the last few times that we've talked about anything to do with recruits, he says, listen, if you're winning them on money, if you win them on the bag, you're going to lose them on the bag. Yeah. On the back end. And that's the whole thing, is that's why I've said so many times that building personal relationships, that's the job of the coaching staff. The financial side of things, just like in the NFL, needs to be the job of the financial people, the general manager. You've got your cap people and all that kind of stuff in the NFL. I think this is what we're going to at this point. This is why you've seen a lot of these schools are starting to head in that direction. I think that it's nothing but a good thing. When you've got a guy like Curtis Lofton that's been doing it at the next level up, they know what they're doing, and it takes a lot of that stuff off the plate. So now you get to go out there and focus on football. There's another side of this. And this is kind of fun to me. As we saw today, Oklahoma State is actually doing some experimenting, and it was just a day or two ago that he was sending messages to his players' agents to quit calling them, that it was time to play football. And today he's out there talking about QR codes on their helmets where you can donate to their players. I mean, maybe the GM should be talking about this, Coach, and you were so worried about it. This is why he is Mike Gundy. But there's a difference in Premier and weak sauce. It just is what it is.
It's interesting for sure, right? Like, yeah, 100. And it's a creative way. It's like Deion Sanders putting, your hashtag, right, or your at profile, for getting that notification, getting that notoriety on the back of the practice jerseys, as long as they're not doing it for game jerseys. But I'll tell you, I do think it's unique. It's maybe a creative way to steer clear of getting phone calls. I don't know. But that's where I think your GM plays a huge role, right? You do have a guy who today you have to have the business side in it from a standpoint of, we are in a new era.
The point is he's been complaining about these guys calling. Apparently there's an issue there. If they're calling your office, Coach, and then you're, the day after you say that, and it's not a good thing, and then now you're saying, hey, scan the UPC code and or the QR code, and so you can donate to our program.
There you go.
Why don't you have a GM for that? They just got a donation of over $200 million last year from T. Boone Pickens estate. So come on now.
Yeah. I hear you. It's interesting, right? Like, it's a unique, I think everybody's starting to see the experimental side of things, of like, how do we get easy way to, get these players their notification, right? Or their notoriety, or their money. And that's cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, thanks, Ryman. I appreciate you, Doug. It's for sure interesting. I will say on this side is that as we get more and more investors into these teams, right? It's going to be interesting to see how they go about different creative ways to pull in that direct kind of contact NIL wise with direct players. Now, again, this is where I think having a really good general manager, although it's for the name, image, and likeness, money side, it's also in a general for the recruiting side. Like, we forget that it is all connected, and you still have to have a guy who really knows how to bring people together, right? To talk the numbers, but find the right players to set everything. I mean, you're general manager, right? Your role is to oversee everything. It's a front office, just like in the NFL. Like I like it, man. Like Scott V, you just kind of said it. I think early evals are becoming more of a science, and you need a GM to head up that side of things, scouting personnel, etc. 100%. That's exactly what it is. I like the fact, and you do, Mike G. What's going on, big dog?
Georgia
I like Mike
Coca-Cola
G. Love it,
Bulldogs.
love good old Mike G. But I'll tell you, I like Courtney Morgan's done a phenomenal job. Now, I think there's been some fear, right? As everybody feels. Now, I wouldn't say that's necessarily the case at Oklahoma, but with Alabama, you've gotten some, big high profile players, and Oklahoma does too. But I think with Bama, it's been interesting with this Auburn back and forth. Very, very interesting. And now a little bit with Tennessee, right? We had Jaden Harmon who flipped over to Tennessee, but then you also just got the commitment of Ackland Deer, which is I think everyone's been waiting on for a minute. Huge, number 2 running back in the nation, just a beast, right? And we've been waiting on that one. I think you're going to see through the season as we get in and we're hitting these recruiting, like this front office staff, no matter what team you're on, is going to become crucial, right? Because especially for a lot of coaches in this part of the year. So Alabama's coaches, year 1, high expectations. Oklahoma's coaches, year 3, high expectations. You know what I'm saying? Like Venables, regardless of what anybody's saying, I have said it before, they are a team they have the attitude like, F around and find out. Right. Like I said that in a post a few weeks ago. Right. Or maybe even a week ago. And they have this mindset in Venables in that press conference. They're going, how do you create that same level of adversity on the field? Like, I don't think coaches can say that. He goes, well, wait a minute. What? Oh, we can create that. And they do. I mean, you have the right coaches in there, man.
Said, wait, yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. Yeah.
He was like, look, if we're not coaching this like it's the biggest fourth down, of the season of our lives, then we're not doing the right thing. It's on us. And look, this is what he does every day. Every day.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about this. I was on with JP and the JP and Trav show with Coop the other night, and obviously JP, our host, on there, and we talked about that. And it was, look, you can keep sleeping, and we don't care at this point, because here we are. The season is upon us. We're in week 0 here, and we're going to get to talking about a lot of this stuff. But there's a lot of, even within the fan base, a lot of PTSD, because what Oklahoma's been used to really for the better part of 10 years now is subpar defense. And so they've had to, you got to win the race to 50. You got to win the race to 50. That's how it is. So when a guy like Jackson Arnold, and you do have new offensive linemen trying to gel together, but they're going up against a group of guys, DJ Terry and Dominic Williams. And then you've got Jaden Jackson, who everybody seems to think is probably going to start right here in year 1. You've got, David Stone. Then the edge guys are just nasty as well. And the number 2 ranked linebacker core by Phil Steele. The number 2 ranked secondary by Phil Steele. It's going to be a rough time for those guys. And they know the offense too. Oklahoma hasn't really changed the offense in a long time. 25 years probably. So if you think that Jackson's struggling a little bit, and that's the PTSD, and everybody's a little freaked out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would be more freaked out, and we talked about it. I would be a lot more freaked out if they were dominating the defense when we need the defense to be on point in year 1 in the SEC. If you're going to win in the SEC, you got to win in the trenches. You got to win on defense.
Yes.
And so, I think that Jackson is going to be fine. I've said this a million times. I do not worry about Oklahoma offense. I just don't.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Like with Jackson and the offensive line, but granted, with the right people in place, which they do from a coaching staff standpoint, I believe that with Oklahoma, I don't feel like that's going to be a problem. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you have to get these guys to gel. All right, well, not everybody has an LSU or a Georgia offensive line, because let's be honest, those 2 offensive lines this year are going to be very very difficult to go up against. But I will say this, and Neilio, good to see you. Good to see you, man. I see a couple others in here that want to say what's up, man. T Boomer, what's going on? What's going on, man? Moosehead, what's up? But I'll tell you, like Oklahoma on the defensive side, you look at the depth, and I've said this over and over again, is I think they're going to be a very scary team to go against defensively. So are you going to have, is their offense going to have to put up plus 30 points a game to win the games? I don't think so. You know what I'm saying? What's up, John? How you doing, brother?
That's for damn sure. We don't need Jackson to go run the high.
You just need him to be efficient. To be honest with you, you almost want him to be similar to what Graham Mertz was last year for Florida. You want him to be efficient. Yeah. Like Graham Mertz was perfect at that, and that's what helped Florida be semi-decent. I mean, Graham Mertz was efficient.
I just thought about something when you brought that up. It seems like the same people that are talking all this shit about that, how bad Jackson Arnold's going to be, that, he's the Gatorade High School Player of the Year, when he came out and all that, the Elite 11 winner, were the same people that told you Graham Mertz was going to be shitty when he got to the SEC as well.
Yeah, that definitely. I think, again, what do you have backing you as a coach? Right? Like, it's the same damn theory that everyone brings up and wants to argue against Jalen Milroe.
Hey, there's John.
Buddy. Yeah, I love seeing John, man. John's the man. John's putting out great content right now. I love it, John. Let me know when you want me on again.
He's out there, man. I'll tell you what,
good job.
Enjoy watching Jonathan Lewis and his shows. I'm glad he's back around more on a more regular basis, man. Good to see you in here, buddy.
Yeah, it's great to see you, man. And getting back to what I was saying real quick, it's the same thing where people talk about like Jalen Milroe, right? They're like, oh, Jalen Milroe, he's not going to be this, he's not going to be that. Time out. What did you just put behind him? Like, if you put the right coaching staff in place that helps communicate and get through to these guys, right? Like, that's the whole thing, is you can teach all day. We could all go into a classroom and teach kids all day long. It's those who come out and actually are able to connect with the kids, get through the message, and maybe look at a different way of explaining and showing them. And then boom, they start to fix their little errors that they were consistently having, right? They start to fix these small little things. And next thing you know, they're extremely productive, right? So it's all based on being okay with changing your style to help another guy grow within his style. Right. And if you have the right coaches in place, Oklahoma has that with Seth Luttrell, right? They have that. Like, Seth Luttrell is no joke. All right.
Bro,
Alabama has that.
He's more experienced as a play caller than Lebby was.
Oh, yeah. Luttrell, everyone knows. I mean, well, if you don't, like, his background's pretty phenomenal and what he's done. Not to mention, he's pretty hardcore. You know what I'm saying? He's a tough MFer,
Hey, bro, yeah, he was a fullback, tight end, fullback, H-back guy.
Yeah, well, dude, just look at him when he walks around, man.
Oh, bro, yeah, big old chaw in his
carries
mouth,
that persona.
that big old, man. Hey, he's my man, dude. Hey, you don't like Seth Luttrell, you ain't a Sooner for sure, but yeah, look, their plan is to run the ball, which will help Jackson. Correct? It's got to help. The question, Rob, do you think offense needs to put up at least 20 to reach their season goals? Absolutely. I think that Jackson Arnold needs to go out there. I think you saw Teddy and Gabe talking about this the other day on the Oklahoma Breakdown, where they said, what's the number that's too much on interceptions versus touchdowns? Where do you need to be? Probably got to be somewhere in that 30 touchdown range, no more than 10 on interceptions or turnovers. That's the number. Anything over 10, in between 10 and 15, you're probably starting to get in trouble. Now, have you seen success even if you've got a few some turnovers? Not all turnovers are created equal. I think that was something that they talked about as well. Sometimes you can use it as a punt, and we haven't had a great punting the last couple of years. So if you throw a deep ball interception on a long 3rd and long or something like that, okay, go fine. You know what I mean? But as I was saying, to me, I feel like, yes, they're going to probably look. I don't know the last time they didn't average over 30 points. And not for nothing, I believe that there's some good defense they're going to go up against. I also think it's not as good on some of these programs that they're going to head up against. I expect a lot from obviously Alabama, if Kane Womack is the guy that everybody says he is, the talent is there, right? They've got it on the defensive line. They're going to have it in the secondary. They don't have a ton of experience, but they got a good coach back there. I trust in what these guys are saying, what he did at Indiana, the things like that. What he was doing at South Alabama, he was good, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got to forget too, I think a lot of people forget when you take away, like you're just directly responsible as a coordinator and you take on a head coach role and everyone's like, yeah, but it's your defense. Look, man, I get it, but you're not necessarily the guy. You have so many other responsibilities that you're thinking about. You're not out there play calling. You're not out there just focused on one, some individual tasks. Like you're looking at game management. You're looking at so many other factors as a head coach. So yeah, people want to give Womack a hard time for his time as a head coach because maybe his defense wasn't as stingy as it was when he was a coordinator.
Playing a lot of really good teams though at South Alabama. It's not like they were just going out there and playing only the Sun Belt or whatever.
Well, and they still had a good defense. I mean, it just wasn't as what
they shut down Oklahoma State in Stillwater last year and won big.
Well, I mean, that right there. Let's just think about that for 1 second because that alone, Oklahoma State, where's their strength? People are saying they potentially have one of the best offensive lines in the nation because of what they return, right? Coach Rick's good to see you, man. I'll also say this is you look at that with Ollie Gordon, and they were able to shut down Oklahoma State's run game, and everyone's concerned about the weakness in this defense of being against the run. I wouldn't have any concerns then with the defense that Alabama is going to bring against the run with Womack calling the defense, right? Like, look what he was able to do. So they're right there. I think defensively, I don't have the same worries as a lot of other people bring up regarding Alabama's defense. Do they have similar depth?
But it's a question, though. I'm not saying necessarily worry. I said a question, right?
Yeah, 100. And this is where I get into, do they have the similar depth though to like what Oklahoma has? You know what I'm saying?
Of course. They're the best roster talent in the country. It's still the best roster talent in the country. It's rated that way.
I do, but here's my thing is I do think Oklahoma depth-wise defensively has more. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say defensive line. I think Alabama does have some of the deepest defensive line depth in the nation. If not number one. I mean, their defensive line depth's insane. But will we look at the secondary? Like Oklahoma secondary is stacked.
No doubt.
Okay. Their linebacking core is stacked. All right.
Stacked.
Like defensive line, they're still good. They just don't have the same depth. I'm not saying they don't have it. It's not the same. So I think you look at some of these different aspects, what's going to help Oklahoma through their start of this season, what they get into, right? They more so need to get a flow offensively. I think defensively they'll come out firing right away. Whereas it's going to be a little opposite for Alabama. I think they need to get a little bit of a flow defensively beginning to get their understanding, especially with the youth they have secondary wise. And then I think offensively they're going to come out firing right away. So you get two different aspects when you look at all that, but I do think you have two teams right here, take away your Georgia. Very interesting to see what Tennessee is going to be about, right? But you take out Georgia out of the picture because we know Georgia's going to come out smooth, right? They're going to come out firing. They should be good. LSU, big question mark, right? Big question mark. So, and Notre Dame stacked on D with great depth. Notre Dame is very stacked on D. Mm-hmm.
Coach has been talking about this a lot the last couple of years, that there's a big parallel between like where Oklahoma is at the moment, and a lot of it coincides with the fact they changed coaches at the same time as Notre Dame. So Kelly goes to LSU. Obviously, you get slimy Lincoln take off to SC, but so two defensive-minded coaches come in, take over there. And the thing, I think the question has now become at Notre Dame kind of similar to, again, coach has been saying a lot of parallels to draw. The question is, what do you see out of Riley Leonard? And just like you're saying, what do you see out of Jackson Arnold? The truth is, we still need to see this defense kind of step up to where it is. But again, Notre Dame is one of those programs that is going to have the beef on the front line as well. it was weird. I was watching the Barstool college football last night, and they were talking about they were picking their college football playoff and really hating on them. And I was like, this is why I know that these guys are clowns. All
They were hating on who? Say that again.
Notre Dame completely. They're just
yeah.
they're trash, and how dare I can't believe that you would have them here and blah 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 blah. They're going to get into the playoff, but not because they're good enough. And it's like, okay, first off, these are the same people that are also picking Texas, who lost 11 guys to the draft and had to go heavy in the portal, lost their best defensive players, and everybody said they reloaded and they're ready to go. Same people, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of these. You double talk. A lot of people that are talking out of both sides of their mouth. The truth is, when it comes to Oklahoma, and I would say the same when it comes to Notre Dame, if you're not depending on your defense, then you're probably not in the place that you need to be. And again, this offense, aside from a few wrinkles that each coordinator comes up with, it's not different. And Lincoln Riley did not start and end offensive firepower at Norman. He didn't. And neither did Jeff Lebby, for that matter. Again, Seth Littrell has a lot more experience calling plays than Jeff Lebby does. He didn't get to call him at UCF. He wasn't calling him at Ole Miss.
Yeah. Well, and Seth was there the last year. Like so that's the thing about it. It's not like he's going in making massive changes on offense. I don't even think that should be a concern. Seth was right there coaching. I just think they'll be more efficient, and I think they'll be more balanced, and that's a good thing. And hey, Miss Shelby, First Lady, what's going on? Shelby,
First Lady.
Yeah,
our favorite.
Yeah. But I mean, one thing you just sit there and you look at, right, is like Seth's going to come in. He's going to be balanced. He's going to be aware. I think way more aware of what Arnold can do and where his strengths and maybe where things he needs to work on. Right. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be, man, I'm excited to see what Oklahoma's product is on the field offensively. I know the expectation and what we should see defensively. Offensively, I'm very interested to see how he uses.
Well, let's talk about a few things with that. On the offense, we're seeing really good running right now. What they're doing, if they're doing anything really well, and this is something that takes a lot of pressure off of a young quarterback, you've got a stacked running back room. You've got Devontae Barnes coming in and looking more like he did as a freshman. He's not injured right now. He's able to hit the hole, hit it hard. And we got Jonathan Lewis coming in, man. He's able to hit the hole. What's up there, man? Welcome into the show, Jonathan Lewis.
What's going on, guys?
Appreciate you coming in, brother. How you doing?
Another day, man. Another day. Great news as an Alabama fan getting Ackland Deer, obviously, today. So
big move.
Good day. Good day.
Yeah. Felt good, man.
And I'll let you kind of jump in on this too, because I know you do talk a lot of Oklahoma and Bama, and we're talking all of it anyways most of the time. So I would say that when you start looking at OU, you want to take some pressure off of a young quarterback. So how do you do that? You run the rock. You use tight ends. They've got a really good tight end transfer that came in Bauer Sharp. You've got some young guys that you're expecting to come in, and look, they've had some injuries to some of these guys as well. That would be big. But you also have a unbelievable wide receiver room.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to go out there and win the game by himself. He just has to be efficient, not throw the ball away, not be throwing a bunch of interceptions, and then lean on your defense.
I think the best way I can describe this is like it's going to be a version of what Jalen Milroe turned into last year, as in let Jackson Arnold concentrate on half the field, use pure pass progression, right, to where the routes run in your view versus you having to scan the whole field. I think that's going to be a big key point to this. And look, the wide receivers is not going to be a problem for Oklahoma. Bill Bedenbow is there for the line. I think the line's not going to be a problem, right? I think it's going to come down to, in my opinion, when I made videos about Jackson Arnold before he even committed to Oklahoma, I said, this dude reminds me a lot of Tim Tebow. He doesn't have the best mechanics, right, and all this other stuff. But what he does do is he gets the ball down the field. He wins you games, and his stat box is insane, right? He'll throw for 400 yards one game, then he'll throw for 100, but run for 150 the next. Why? Because he just does what he has to do to win those games, right? I don't like fitting quarterbacks into a box, saying this is what you need to look like, this is what you need to throw like. No, if this is how you do things, mold that around that offensive scheme. And look, yeah, handing the ball off, I think rolling him out with easy progressions, crosses, stuff like that coming across the field, get him introduced into the offense. But I have to say, Oklahoma did a great job of already doing that last year in the bowl game by throwing him into the damn fire. And I think it wasn't intentional to say, go win us the game. It was more along the lines, in my opinion, to say, we're going to put you in the biggest spotlight you've ever been in with the brightest lights. And we're going to really see what you're made of. Right. And that way there should be no jitters when it comes to next season, because you've already been put in that spot. So, yeah.
No, I mean, that's a great, I like that, right? Because, you know, you really put him in a position of pressure, which there wasn't a better time to do so, right? Because win or lose, it's important. It's a game. Every game is important. You want to win every game. But what it does do is give him that experience to get on the field and get a feel, right, for how he sees the field. What does his layered progression look like, right? We've talked about the way Kalen DeBoer and OC over there with forgive me, I'm blanking on names right now. Give me the OC's name, somebody, please.
Nick Sheridan for Alabama.
Yeah, Nick.
Yeah,
Nick Sheridan. The way Nick and Nick and Kalen DeBoer, the way they call the offense, and it's a layered route system that comes into the vision of Milroe. So the reads are very easy to progress through. Now, how does Jackson, with his ability, be able to go through and how does he see the field so you can layer and put the route trees in the right order so his progression, the way he sees it, is easier, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's a great test in game one, like you were saying in the bowl game, John, is that truly you can finally get a feel for how this guy looks in depth on a field through the whole game, whether or not he has a stellar game or a semi game, and it's maybe not the best. Doesn't matter, because at that point, what you're trying to do is establish him for next season and just get him comfortable, see the field. And now here we get to watch his progression with the coach that really knows how to make guys great.
Here's what I'm most excited about. Like I get excited every time talking about Jackson Arnold for one thing. When you go back and watch his high school film, when this guy rolls out, the accuracy of throwing it in the basket to the boundary, like outside the hashes, is incredible, dude. And that's what scared me the most when they're like, yeah, Oklahoma's coming to SEC. I'm like, we're going to have to face, you know what I mean? Like, and at the time that defense was on the fringes for us before Kevin still got there. I'm like, this dude is going to light us up. Like if he comes to SEC and this is going on, because we know at the time Alabama's weakness in the secondary, inside the seams, we were good. But man, when you're talking about outside the hashes, getting down the field, we were struggling really bad with. And that's what he does so great, is he stretches the field so much vertically, right? When you watch his film in high school, it's incredible. And when you do that, God forbid you play like one higher on man, because he's going to torch you with his legs. Like at that point, 100. The moment you turn your back, he's gone. So
yeah.
Well, and I've said this a lot too. Is the thing about Jackson Arnold is, listen, I'm one of those people that says no, Dylan Gabriel strays, don't do it, because he was a huge bridge and important piece to to keeping them afloat, right? The truth is there's a different floor and a different ceiling when it comes to Jackson Arnold. It's a fact. Dylan, if he's a little off the mark, the ball's not going to make it there. The receiver's going to have to wait on it. You don't have that problem with Jackson. Now, is he, freshmen have the propensity to be a little erratic and think that they can fit certain balls in certain places. You're probably going to go through some of these things. I think if you keep it somewhere between 6 and 10 on turnovers, as far as that goes, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. But he has the ability, and when you look at this receiving core, never mind the fact that Jaden Gibson went out, and that sucks that he went out. You've got another 6'6" guy that they just can pop over there anytime they want. But when you look at Dion Burks and what good luck. Go ahead and double team with somebody. Go ahead and do that. You're screwed. You're screwed.
Yeah.
Try to double team them or run a zone against somebody like that. You're picking your poison really with these guys. And you only have to hit some of them. You don't have to go out there and score 40 anymore, because now chances are you've got a top 10, top 5 defense. They're talking about the secondary in the comments right now. They should be. You've got freshmen that are coming in that were 3-star guys, Michael Boganowski, and Teddy Lehman's talking about him being good enough to be a first rounder. Safeties, it's hard to go in the first round. He's knocking heads off. And, erasing guys running backs coming out of the backfield getting crunched. Yep. Michael Boganowski is that guy. And we don't even know how much they're going to play, because you've got Peyton Bowen and you've got Billy Bowman back there along with Robert Spears-Jennings. There's an embarrassment of riches in that secondary, and there's an embarrassment of riches in that linebacker room when you start thinking about Danny Stutzman coming back. But even there, Coop was talking about it on my show yesterday. Even there, the guys that are seniors, they're not as athletic as these guys that they're bringing in now. That's the difference in OU and what you saw when Lincoln was here and what you're seeing now.
Yeah. No, it's perfect on that, man. I keep preaching this over and over, and especially to Alabama fans. It seems like sometimes just people don't want to listen. Stars don't always matter, guys. I thought one of the biggest and key pieces of Oklahoma's recruiting class this year getting picked up was Floyd Bicard. And people are, he's a 3-star. He's a 3-star. I'm like, this dude is a match made in heaven for this defensive line. I'm like, no, he probably won't be a superstar year one, but it's not always about the stars. If this dude has time to sit and develop, which he will, I'm telling you, it's all about scheme fit, right? So how are they going to roll into that? Just because they're a 5-star does not mean they're going to succeed, right? So they're not always the best fit.
100%. I think that's it's interesting you bring that up, because if you look at even right now what Oklahoma's doing with their recruiting class, they've done a really good job of hitting all these key pieces that fit exactly what they want to run, but also have but also they have versatility, right? They've done you got to sit back and be impressed. They don't have anybody wavering. There's nobody saying, oh, maybe I want to go here, maybe I want to do this. Look, not saying like Alabama that we had a little bit of that, because we did, but I also think it's hard, when you do bring in that much talent and guys have these expectations of how they want to play, and then they look at a chart and they say, oh, how am I going to play? John, I talked about it when we did the video together. You do need depth, though, and guys need to realize, and I think they'll see that after this season when they watch a team like Alabama, but also in a team like Oklahoma, is that how they rotate guys, right? Like, in order to play fast, like I said it before, I said it when we did the video, I said, you want to see the RPMs of your car in the red all the time, but you can only run that for so long before your car craps out on you, unless you have the right things under the hood, right? And on defense, that's depth. You need the depth so you can rotate, stay fresh, and keep your RPMs high, right? You can play fast, you can play aggressive, and get it, right?
I love this saying I heard a long time ago. In the SEC, you don't win the game in the first 3 quarters. You win it in the fourth, right? So it's going to come down to how does your depth look? Because you may have the best. You may have a Will Anderson on your edge. Will Anderson is not playing every snap of the game, and if he is, he's half dead, right? So you need to see what's behind that guy. So, because look at Alabama's wins last year. We won like 4 games in the fourth quarter, right? So where we had to come back, or it just did not look good all game. And the depth finally took over, and I was like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. We're kind of looking like we're supposed to look.
Yeah.
So, that's what it comes down to.
And they're loaded up there, right? They're loaded up there. And Oklahoma, on their D-line, this is the first time that you could say, whether it's Jaden Jackson actually does get to start, you're starting to hear that a lot. You're starting to hear it a lot over DJ Terry, and DJ Terry's a senior. But this is the difference again in where the floor and where the ceiling is. And Jaden Jackson's and this is another guy that was, when he committed, he was ranked in the 400s. Guys, it's not an exact science. The stars don't always matter. There's a lot of programs that would love to have Jaden Jackson in there in that interior. You've got 6 to 7 guys rotating there. You've got another 4 to 5 on the edges as well. And honestly, I think it's more like 6 there as well, because you've got some young guys, you've got some guys that are going to come in that came in through the portal that they're going to flash there too. Look, you better have those guys, like you said, in the fourth quarter. You better have them, and you better have them in the fourth quarter of the year too, coming down the stretch when you got Missouri, Bama, and LSU to close it out.
Jesus, that is brutal.
Yeah,
huge.
It's not Florida. It's not
Huge.
Florida, but Billy Napier, God bless that man.
right.
Next 2
Don't get
years,
me
I don't know how
wrong.
that man's going to make it out of it.
next year. Good grief.
Well, and I'm not as I guess like low on Florida as others, right? Like I could see where Florida could make a splash because all they got to do is win a few little games here, some big ones, and gain some serious confidence and momentum. And then you could potentially see Florida do something good.
Tennessee, they always beat Tennessee.
Man,
Wherever
well,
they always beat Tennessee. Like they win
Tennessee,
that game,
though, is going to be an interesting one.
Changes, right? I like Tennessee.
Yeah.
But one more thing, and we can close out the Oklahoma talk, and particularly Jackson. They keep talking about anything that you're saying about Jackson Arnold is one thing, but that's where I think the first game of the SEC season, you got Tennessee coming in. I can assure you they will not have seen a single thing that they're going to do that day on the film from the first 3 games. They won't. And Nico's a freshman also, or a first-year starter as well. What you think they're going to throw at him? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And if Jackson's struggling and he sees them every day, what do you think might Nico do? Now, look, I think that one of the best players in the country, James Pierce, I think that the big deficiency we're hearing from everybody is that secondary there. You got them at home. I like their opportunity to win that game. I love Nico. I think he's going to be hella good. But you get him early in the season. You get him at home. He won't have seen anything. I think it's going to be a rough day. It's kind of like, when Belichick had a rookie quarterback going up against him, he almost never lost.
Nah, I mean, I like it. Nico's going to be an interesting one because Tennessee, as we get into this a little bit and we kind of branch out to some of these other teams that we're talking tonight, is Tennessee.
The weekend games and stuff a little bit too. But go ahead, finish what you're talking about.
I'm just going to say with Tennessee, there's so many things that a lot of people like about them this year, like from an explosive standpoint, their wide receiver room, right? They should have a pretty decent offensive line. So that's going to really help Nico a lot. And then you switch to defensive side of the ball. Granted, there was an injury in their secondary that was pretty significant in this fall ball, but they do have one of the top defensive players in the nation returning. And forgive me, I cannot remember his name right now. But you look, Tennessee is, if they put the things together, yes, they will be a difficult team no matter what. And Josh is going to do a good job, right? Like, Pupil does a great job. But here's the thing is, can Tennessee get through some of these more, do they have like the mindset, right? Again, it's kind of similar to Texas in a sense. Do they have the mindset in these big, tough games? Like Texas showed it against Alabama, but that was early in the season, whereas in Texas struggled towards the end of the season, right? So does Tennessee have that mindset, right, to get after it against some of these teams that are going to come in putting their full weight? Because like a Florida, they don't want to lose. They've heard all the crap talk. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be, Tennessee is one of those teams where it's like you feel like you just don't know. You're kind of borderline. You're like, well, are they going to be tough, or are they going to be, are they going to be a team that we all thought was going to be great and then kind of rolls over? So which one is it? I don't know, but
I think Tennessee is going to be a lot like Ole Miss. They're going to have to rely on Nico. They're going to have to rely on that offense. And at the end of the day, nobody knows what the defense is going to really look like. James Pierce, I think James Pierce, somebody mentioned it out in the comments. He, in my opinion, he's going to be a top 3 player in this upcoming draft, right?
Thanks,
so
Aaron.
but no, I look at Ole Miss and I look at Tennessee both, and like obviously Jackson Dart has way more experience. We know what to expect, but I think Nico's gonna look good, but he's definitely, he's still I don't know if he's a redshirt freshman because he did play.
I think he is. I don't know if he got past that 4-game limit or not. I think he's a redshirt, but he's a first-year starter either way.
But exactly. He has no experience really, right, in the SEC or just in general in college. So, and like we say, every freshman's going to struggle, man. I don't care what anybody says. Like when you come into this environment, it's not like high school, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and listen, and at some point, there was times that against Iowa last year, they won big, but Iowa didn't have an offense. So at some point, you're going to kind of get it going when you've got to leave the defense on the field the whole day, because they just couldn't get anything going. I would tell you that when it comes to where I see Tennessee, it's kind of the same thing I think with and what I see with Texas is, Scott said that if UT can run the ball, they're down to 3 guys now.
Yeah.
And they're talking about linebackers coming in to play running back. What would make you think that they're going to be really great at running the ball? There ain't no Jonathan Brooks in there anymore. You lost CJ Baxter. The guys, I like Jaden Blue. I like him. I like the next kid that the kid that was at
oh my God, I know who you're talking about, but man,
he's a stud. He runs real smooth. I like him. I think they're good there, and I do think that even their third guy is going to be good. But you're starting to run out of. You haven't even got to a game yet. Wait till you get to that Michigan game. The thing about Texas is they did lose all those guys. They lost 11 guys to the draft. They're reloading in the portal. We've still yet to see a heavy portal team go and do real big things. I feel the same way about Ole Miss. I really don't. And look, I just don't have a whole lot of belief in what Drink and Mizzou are. I know they have a nice little schedule that they don't have to go up against the best of the leagues that much, other than Bama and Oklahoma. But I think there's some other games that'll, you got to go down and play at A&M. You're gonna look. Anytime you play against a Bobby Petrino team, I don't think that defense is going to be the same as it was last year. They lost their whole staff. Yeah. Same thing with Texas. You're going to tell me they're just going to run the ball? I don't see that, because we've yet to see that, even when they had guys like Bijan Robinson and, Jonathan Brooks last year. I struggle to see all that. And I don't even care what they do on offense. What are they going to do on defense without that interior? They're going to struggle there.
So if you're an Alabama fan, maybe you remember this, Jake. Steve Sarkisian's last year, we were thin at running back by the end of the year. We had 2 major injuries happen before the end of the year. If there's one thing Steve Sarkisian does do when he loses running backs, he implements his wide receivers to do a ton of jet sweeps and a lot of just quick tosses, right, to alleviate the load off those. Exactly. Yeah. So I think you're going to see a whole hell of a lot of that at the beginning of the season from Texas. Now, unfortunately, like Alabama suffered from, you can adjust to that very quickly as a defense, because all you're going to do is you're not going to, if you run a 4-3, you're not running a 4-3 anymore. You're just going to come out in the dime package and attack it, which is unfortunately what happened against us. But I think you're going to see a lot of that, because my personal opinion, I thought Blue was a better running back than Baxter. I did. I thought when he came into the game, he had a bigger impact. He had more yards per average, per carry and all that stuff. But the problem with him is he, in my opinion, he doesn't have the endurance Baxter had. So I think that's going to even elevate the problem you already have, because now you have a running back coming into a situation where can he survive the whole game, right? Mm-hmm. So we're really going to see how Sarkisian adjusts to this, because they only have 3, like you said, 3 scholarship running backs now left, and that's it.
That's it. The thing is, and that, I'm glad you brought up that point, because it's funny, because last year we watched Washington do this. Washington did not have depth at running back, right? So they had to set up the run game with the pass game. Sarkisian is notorious for setting up the run game with the pass game. He does it anyhow, right? And so the facts are, is you are right, though, is because he doesn't have necessarily a heavy hitter at running back now, right? Like somebody who can just step out there and make a big break. I mean, there's guys there that could, as long as you got the offensive line in place, and they should have a pretty semi-decent offensive line, right? Like, we all know that. But I'll tell you this is I think it's interesting to see how Sarkisian will play this now, and if they play a certain way, how quickly will teams scheme to shut that down?
Yes.
Right? Yep. How quickly will they shut that down? And then when you do that, you become you want to stay multidimensional, but you can't, right? You become very one-dimensional, or maybe even, two-dimensional, right? You don't have multiple things you can go to anymore. And now it causes you a big stir, and you put that pressure on Quinn Ewers. We're about to see what Quinn Ewers is truly about coming his last year.
Yeah.
And it hasn't always been the best when he's put under that sort of pressure. He's performed in some points, other points he hasn't. So, it's going to be That's going to be an interesting thing to watch. I also saw where in the comments you had it up, Jason, with Tennessee hot take. Tennessee leads the SEC in rushing.
They probably
year.
better if they're going to be in the playoffs.
I do you think Tennessee would lead the
No.
SEC in rushing? There's
they
no
might.
way.
No.
There's no way, dude.
They've got one of the better lines. They got a pretty good line, but I don't think so.
They do have a good line. They don't get me wrong, but you want to talk about like Georgia's defense. You talk about like Alabama's defense.
Yeah.
You talk about some of these defenses.
Well, one thing though is that they don't have as tough of a schedule at Tennessee this year as they have in the past. They don't.
That's true.
So I always pose the question, like, what do you do when it's a young quarterback like Nico? They're going to stack the line, stop the run, and force Nico to beat you with his arm. We got to see what he's made of. So the rushing for Tennessee is probably not going to look good early in the season because teams like that are going to start stacking the line, right? 8, 9 in the box.
It'll make you beat them there.
And you have to beat us with your arm, bro. So,
and when we look at, granted, okay, I definitely see where you're coming from, Scott. I do give you this. Is you are at Oklahoma, which we know that from a run game standpoint, Oklahoma will definitely shut down the run. Like, that's not a question with this style of defense they run. You're at Arkansas after that. Arkansas is an interesting one. Florida, again, interesting one. Florida's at home, and then you have Bama at home. Interesting. Then you got Kentucky at home, Mississippi State at home. Then you're at Georgia, which we know from a run standpoint, what Georgia does defensively is meant to stop the run. So it's going to be tough. I could see a little bit of your argument with some of the games that they play, right? Like early on, and some of these hits in there. But, you look at like, you look at some of these other teams and what they have at running back, Georgia and ETN, Mike Bobo's their offensive coordinator. Yeah. He focuses 100% on the run game. Like the run game is, and their offensive line's legit. So like they're real. That is one hell of an offensive line. I mean, it'd be hard for me not to say like Georgia's going to do it, but I could even see Alabama with what they do. And Matt Farms, what's going on, big dog? How you doing, man? But I mean, Alabama's three-headed monster.
Make sure to pop this in here, so I'll just add this.
But the brand has finally returned. Fuck your brand.
Yes. I like it.
So it's got to get in there at some point.
Yeah. And I get you, Scott V. I think that's where it's going to be interesting to see how with this right here, Georgia, from a standpoint of the way they play, right? They play the pattern match, cover 3 defense that with their hybrid. I mean, it's Nick Saban's defense with a little bit of changes, right? With what Kirby runs. They stop the run first. That's number one. That's part of their religion in that defense. Yeah. Then you look at like even in Oklahoma with their 3-3-5, their defense is meant for speed, and some of the changes they've done, I think that's going to be really hard to break major runs if you're trying to do that. And then not to mention over the top, they have probably one of the better secondaries in the SEC this year. So that's going to be a really interesting game, because if you're saying, hey, we are going to stack the box and let you play a little, man quarter or man free, okay, which I could see Oklahoma doing, right? Here's what you run into is they have a very experienced secondary, and you're putting a lot of pressure on Nico to make plays very early on. That's going to be tough, man.
You want him to run against these guys? I mean, Nico to get out there and run a lot. That's pretty dangerous there, Scott. Mom, hello.
We'll see.
You want to say hello to my mother? She popped in here to say hello to everybody. So, yep.
What's up, Mama Watkins?
Appreciate it. Yeah. Look, I think that when you start talking Georgia defense, and they haven't been the same as they were in their back-to-back championships, that you got a lot of unknowns there on the defensive line and stuff, and a lot of not as much experience. It's still freaking Georgia, folks. They're still 2 and 3 deep there, and they've got speed at all those spots too. So I would tell you, if OU has 6 in the box all night, we'll rush for 250. How much you want to put on that, Scott V?
I just wrote a comment back to that. I said, dang, Scott, you trying to start a riot with that comment, dude.
Yeah.
It's an Oklahoma podcast, bro.
And I would just tell you that, you can put your money where your mouth is. I'll tell you that, because we've heard a lot of that stuff from Tennessee lately, and we're not even hating on, if I say Tennessee's the real UT. I'm good with all that. But easy on that stuff. You're not going to run for 250 on this defense. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
He says,
and
let's put down.
why would they put 6? Why they don't even need to put 6 in the box? You want to put 250 on it? Hey man,
oh, man, I like it.
The Cash App is in there. Put it in the Cash App, and we'll hold it there. That's how you get to bet.
Yeah, I will say with Aaron,
but put it in the Cash App.
It's not Aaron's comment. OU was 48th in average yards per rush. We will. I agree. It was not what they probably would have wanted to be. But I also think you look at the standpoint of injury with Oklahoma last year, from an injury standpoint, and I think there was a lot of question marks defensive line wise. Granted, they got great pressure, but
the depth wasn't right, man.
The depth is you did not have like that guy who blew. Again, in these defenses, Texas, let me highlight Texas for a minute. A 2-4-5. That's 2-4-5. Interesting, right? Because everyone's like, hey, that's different than what we've all seen. What's a 2-4-5? 2-4-5. I'll tell you, man, your interior, your nose tackle, your D tackle, you just put in timeout, man.
I always put Bevo in timeout. It's just what I do.
Man, sorry, Bevo. But and Coach Carl, good to see you, dog. Good to see you, man.
Podcast talking shit every time.
but I mean, you look like we go back with what I was saying with this 2-4-5 Texas runs, right? It works really good when you have the guys they had last year, right? Like who was that? It was Sweat and it was Murphy, dude. Those two dudes in the middle. Like you've seen those two dudes, of course they're shutting stuff down. But if you don't have that, now you start to run into some issues because you are now relying on really, really good gap discipline and guys not getting blown off the ball, right? Like in the SEC, which is really hard to maintain every single game versus some of these offensive lines that you're going to face. Now, that's where you could see Tennessee win in a situation like that versus a D-line that has maybe some question marks there. Oklahoma doesn't have that this year, though. I mean, look who you get, and who is that? Demonic Williams, right?
Serious amount of injuries early. I think that's a pipe dream to think that you're going to do that because let's just say that you get past that D line. Let's just say you do, right? Now you got to deal with Danny Stutzman and there's guys like Lewis Carter back there, and Kip Lewis Kip Lewis was that guy. Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis, you've got Samuel Omosigo. But what you're starting to see in the back end of the whole thing, the back seven is kind of positionless. And this is when you know that Venables is at his best. It's kind of positionless. Michael Boganowski is getting, as a true freshman, a lot of run right now. And we got a 5-star in Peyton Bowen, and you've got a potential All-American in Billy Bowman, and then Robert Spears Jennings back there. But not only just Boganowski, you've got Reggie Powers III. You've got there's a bunch of freshmen. They were talking about Eli Bowen getting a ton of time at the corner position. You're talking, and I know you guys probably, and Jake, I know you remember this guy. Think about it's Jeremiah Newcomb, his dad Bobby Newcomb that went to Nebraska.
Yeah, freaking tank, dude.
Another dog, true freshman. There's a bunch of freshmen that are now they're starting to pick it up quicker. I think the biggest part was you had some guys that still it's a tough defense to kind of learn. And if you miss your assignment, it looks bad. When you had some injuries and you had some young guys, the mix was not good for them to continue to be as good as they should have been defensively. Look, we can call it what we want. They just didn't finish off the year. That's what Venables has talked about the entirety of this offseason is we want to see you finish the season. Go finish. That's the biggest thing. And that's what's going to decide whether or not you're contending for the playoff or you're not.
Well, and I think they have a weapon there, right? And it's funny, Sooner Legends podcast, you beat me to it, I think the weapon is, honestly, when it comes down to is this defense in playing with a higher productivity and efficiency is going to be Zach Alley. And it's the way Zach, how aggressive he is. Not saying Brent is not aggressive, but again, as a head coach, you're not focused on calling a defense. right? Your game management, there's a lot of other factors going on. So you bring in Zach Alley, who is basically he's in a more aggressive style play caller than BV, with an ability to understand the defense, to hide things. I mean, Zach Alley reminds me of like a little younger version of Kane Womack. Because one thing Womack that everyone gave Kane Womack credit for as a D coordinator was his ability, man, I'll tell you, it was his ability to really see a defense and understand how to hide things correctly to get the most efficiency, especially at Indiana, right?
Yeah.
How they're able to shut down Michigan's run game. Next week, they shut down Michigan State's run game, right? When at Indiana, that you're getting productivity out of these guys now, right? Because of the way you're calling it. Again, we'll see that at Alabama. I think that's where you're going to see Zach Alley be very. He's gonna be very beneficial to what he has and do a great job of focused in, locked in, and having the things in place to make sure this defense is great.
Zach spent so much time. I mean, he, as a student and then as a graduate assistant, he was there for 7 years. They're calling him the BV clone. And that was BV called most of it last year because he didn't trust. There was no trust there when it came to Ted Roof. Ted Roof didn't align the same way. Now, the changes that you're seeing, BV sent him out, told him to go and get learn from some other guys and do some other things. He came back with some little wrinkles here and there. You don't know who's going to be calling what, a lot of it, and BV's loving that. It's like you can keep wondering who's calling the plays because we're not telling you. The beauty of it is, I think that Zach has done a great job. We saw what he did at Jacksonville State. I mean, the more you watch, if you go back and watch some of that film, Rich Rod was really upset to lose him because they were doing things on defense, top 15 in a lot of areas. They were causing turnovers, getting a lot of sacks, a lot of tackles for loss, really aggressive though. And that's what you want to see. And I think it's just a little bit of a different voice. Even though they're calling him the clone, it's a different voice, right? So you sometimes where, Jaron Kanak was struggling a lot, last year, that he just didn't seem to know what he was doing, and you're not going full speed when you're tentative about what you're doing. That's where maybe you get that little different voice, and now the light clicks on, and Jaron Kanak's a 4-3 guy that likes to knock people's heads off. Now we're cooking, that's the main thing. Go ahead.
I think the defenses are going to be something to watch this year, period, across the board. Because I'll start off with just Alabama, for example. Most people assume that like Nick Sheridan calls the offense, right? So we'll start on the offensive side for Alabama. No, that's not the case. Because even though, yes, he's the offensive coordinator, Jamarcus Shepard was actually calling the plays for, Caleb DeBoer, right? When he was at Washington.
Yeah, Caleb DeBoer.
So what he does, he brings these guys in as co-coordinators and gives these guys specific play calling duties, blah, blah, blah. And now that we have the unlimited assistance on the field to coach, right, directly with these players and with the other coordinators, I think you're going to see more of that going across the board, especially on the defensive side. So now these guys are able to be on the field during game day, or whether they're up in the box, and they're going to be more involved with the play calling. So I want to see how that's going to spread across all of college football in general, but mainly I think on the defensive side, because you look at Alabama, we have now more assistance on the defensive side than the offensive side. And I think it's for an obvious reason, because look at how much evolved the offenses are, and the defense has to catch up. Eventually, something's got to give at some point, because when you look at the SEC, even like outside of Georgia, I mean, who is really the lockdown defense? I mean, I'm talking about Georgia a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
who is the defense, right? So there's just
even they were talking about
down.
Missouri, they still gave up 50 at home to LSU.
Yes, exactly.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say Missouri was even close to lockdown defense. No. I mean, they were good. Baker was great job. He did a great job there. Defensive coordinator at Missouri, goes to LSU. He did a phenomenal job, but you're right though, John. Like you look at the way. So, and I like how you brought this in with Alabama, but we could talk about it from other teams as well. But I know Alabama better.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said it.
Yeah.
No,
so
let's talk some other teams.
Yeah. So let me say this is like you look at like Alabama. We talk about at Washington how play calling worked, right? So you had your main play caller was sitting there obviously with Ryan Grubb. Okay, so Ryan Grubb sits up in the box. He oversees. He's looking at it from a schematic standpoint. How do numbers match based on where you're at in the hash, field boundary? There's a lot of terminology I can get into and confuse the hell out of everybody with it. Not going to do that. All he had to do was look at it and try to match numbers, right?
Yeah.
From that standpoint, he says, this is what I feel good about. These are what we're looking at. What do you have personnel wise to Shepard, who manages as a pass game coordinator? From that standpoint, right? As a pass game coordinator, Shepard goes, we have this guy. These are the matchups they're seeing in communication directly with the players. Okay. From there, Grubb is going, okay, this is the last sets we've ran through, right? These are the sets they've presented. Here's the percentages. This is the route I think we go. Boom. Next thing you know, Shepard says, all right, let's go with these guys in this matchup. What do we have, based on play call sheet? And then a decision is made. It's very fast. That sounds like a slow version of doing it. It happens very, very quick. But that's where we come in with the number of coaches, right? So now you have the number of coaches, and it's interesting at Alabama because you have some guys over there right now. And you could say Oklahoma did a similar thing last year with Luttrell being in a similar position where he was a quality control coach. He was a coach. All those terms, right? Like those terms, they were all done for keeping compliance. Yeah.
He's doing a lot.
Those were compliance terms. That compliance thing is gone. Thank God.
Completely.
Thank God. I did a video on that. You guys want to watch and see what I'm talking about? Go watch the video. It talks about how it's changed, right? But
and it wasn't really
it's all compliance based for the NCAA.
No matter what they said, it wasn't a thing.
no, it was never a thing. But you look at it from a standpoint, right, where now you have these guys like you have Brian Ellis. Brian Ellis comes from record-breaking offenses both at Western Kentucky and Georgia Southern. He's sitting there as a tight ends coach. He has impact. You also have Coach Kaepernick, right, or Kapilovic. Sorry, Coach Cap. With Kapilovic, he comes from a run game coordinator, offensive coordinator, pass game coordinator, while at North Carolina, again, record-breaking offense. You jump in and you start to break down what they have behind there. There's a Mitch Dolan. Mitch Dolan is like a stud quarterback coach nobody has any idea about. He's sitting there as the assistant right now, right? He's the assistant to Nick Sheridan. And nobody has any clue who Mitch Dolan is. Mitch Dolan's a freaking stud. A stud. Right? Comes from like lower ranks, worked his way up. You're starting to see these guys. It's funny because USC did the same thing now defensively. Like Lincoln Riley might have gotten something to click.
They did a good job getting guys in there. It's a matter of
100
getting the players now.
I did that video on USC recently, right? Like 2 weeks ago. And it talks about how they structured their coaches in certain positions that come from other places. You got to give Riley credit. Like, dude, he did something well there. Right, like
either that or Jen Cohen.
Yeah, Jen Cohen could have definitely been a big part of that. But it's going to be fun to watch. I think defensively, what you talk about, John, is we don't necessarily know those key names at some of these other schools of who they're using in the background as we do offensively, right? Because offensively, we focused on that because we're seeing it just trend and trend and trend. But I will say this, man, is defensively what they're doing at these schools, they're finding the right guys and putting them in place to help with during the game. To give you guys an idea from a player standpoint, during a game, when you're out there on the field, there's a lot of dudes, right? Like a lot of coaches. Yeah, Moon Rocker. What's up, dog?
I like Moon Cool.
There's a lot of coaches out there, and what they're doing is they're charting different players, different positions. They're charting plays. They're charting a lot of different aspects, and then they're giving that information as quickly as they can, right, to the coordinators and the position coaches, who then communicate down the line, right, to make sure we're staying on track with what type of plays we're calling, that we're playing a offense, that we're not playing reactive, that we're playing proactive, right? And so
exactly.
And that's the whole key of it, right? And that's why you have all those guys. That's why it's going to be fun to see what guys come into place coaching wise this year from each team that make huge impacts to their defenses.
Well, I would tell you, and let me just ask you guys this, and look, controversial down team. I don't know how controversial it is. You've got a new staff in there, but here's the thing that I think that, I don't know, I don't remember who was talking about this, but I think this has probably been what's been going on with Bama the last few years is, early on, the coaching staff from top to bottom was unbelievable at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
The last few years, you've seen it's dipped in, Saban's still Saban, but you don't have the same guys running the defenses you've had in the past. There's no more Kirby Smarts or Dan Lannings or, Midnight Mail, even whatever. Those guys aren't there. And so, and the same on offense. I mean, no more Lane, no more Sark, no more Mike Loxley. These guys, the coaching staff. Now, it feels like to me that this Bama staff, while you don't know who they are necessarily, they're young, they're hungry, and we know, and everything you hear about Womack is he's going to be very good. Plus, he can go down and talk to the boss. He can go down and talk to Nick Saban anytime he needs to and work on some stuff. This is the reason that I've said I'm not going to be the one predicting the downfall of Alabama. Now, if you're saying 9-3 is a down year, okay,
I'll take that.
I can see that. Right? I can see that.
Yeah. I mean,
but I know a lot of Bama fans will not be okay with 9-3, but I can see that, right?
I would, as a Bama fan, I would absolutely be okay with that. We're talking about one of the largest turnovers in staff that you can almost see in college football. And we're not talking about just from a head coach, offense and defense coordinator. We're talking about Nick Saban had 119 assistants. Only about 25% of those came back. So you're talking about a massive turnover, right? And, I know a lot of people talk about the flips. I honestly thought we would see more flips leaving, the players leaving Alabama than what we did. I thought it would be just a mass exodus.
Well, especially when there was nobody else that was able to hit the portal at that moment. They were just picking on them.
Oh, yeah, man.
Bro,
yeah, man.
I was expecting this to be way worse. And if you tell me 9-3, I'm very comfortable with that. Like, in all honesty, because this is a very young staff and a young team outside of Jalen Milroe, right? So
they don't have a ton of receiving help that has experience. I mean, they've got talent, but
9-3, I'd be happy with that easily.
Well, and we're ready to take 9-3. Most Oklahoma fans looking at the schedule is like, look, you go 9-3 this year, you're going to have a shot at the playoff. You go 10-2, you're in. But I mean, everybody that they ranked in front of OU, except for Georgia, they play in the regular season.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because I love the SEC. And I know I love Oklahoma and Texas coming into the SEC, but there comes a point in time where it's like, damn it, man. Like, where's the break? Like, you know what I mean? Because it seems like every other game is going to be, well, I'm an Alabama fan or you're an Oklahoma fan, whatever it is. You're sweating the whole time. And I'm going to have a heart attack by the end of this year. So,
yeah.
Emilio has a really good point here, though, too. It's easy to say you're going to I mean, look, whatever 9-3 is or whatever the downfall is of Alabama, if it's 9-3, that ain't bad. But this could also be the fact. Look, he took over a team that was 4-8 at Washington and went 25-3 in the next two seasons. Yeah. He played for a national title. They didn't have the talent. Now, the wide receiver room was different at UW. But come on, bro, that was different.
They were deep, bro.
But they had three main dudes, right?
They were better than Ohio State in the
100. Yeah.
So you figure, but the rest of the way you're thinking, okay, what else they got? They're good, but they're not Bama talent wise, and he's done more with less. So again, whereas you had Tommy Rees calling trash last year, you've got Kalen DeBoer that's going to be able to scheme them open, scheme these guys, I think they're probably going to run the ball a lot. He knows how to do that too, but I know they like to throw it around. The scheme is going to be on another level, just like what Nilo's saying here. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the offense is definitely going to see an uptick. Tommy Rees, I tried not to be too critical of him, but I felt like Tommy Rees was what I was talking about earlier. He wants your offense and he wants your quarterback to fit in that box. your
Right.
offense just doesn't work in. And I think it took him a month to figure that out with Jalen Milroe to like, you don't fit in that box, bro. He's not a 3-step mechanical, just going to throw a dot guy.
Let him be a
No.
guy. Let him be
Exactly.
a guy. Let him go out there and be the guy is what you
Yep.
need to do.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't like when they do it. All right, let's talk a little bit about week 0. You know, the big matchup, and it's the concern for everybody is Florida State, Georgia Tech in Dublin, Ireland. What happens if Georgia Tech pulls the upset here? I got a quick answer. They blame Herbie again.
Oh man, I like that. That's a good one right there. Man, I think it's going to be interesting, right? I think you're going to really see from a standpoint of coaching, right? You're going to see whether Norvell is able to put it together once again, right? With a team, you bring in a quarterback who's kind of had some ups and downs, right? Like career wise, and DJ's a good quarterback.
I love DJU,
but again,
we take no shots at DJ.
Much respect to DJU, but he's had an up and down career. And so, and the next part of this is here's the thing though, like we talk about that, but Travis, the last quarterback he had was the same thing. Like Travis, nobody knew who he was until he was able to put it together.
He had really, really good receivers that they didn't exactly do that again. They didn't add those cats in there this year.
Yeah. And that's gonna be interesting. What's the offensive line like for Florida State, right? Like I mean, that's another question. Like how they should be pretty decent. The running game definitely was able to add some depth to the portal, right? But I think if Georgia Tech comes out and beats, because Georgia Tech is not some team everyone should sleep on, right? Their quarterback's a stud.
They have been. They're just not. Wow.
Yes.
Man, we're still loving on Haynes King.
Dude, he can play.
He's a baller, yeah. He is.
You're talking Georgia Tech, you're not talking like some crazy. This dude can play for being over at Georgia Tech. I mean, we saw what he's able to do. He put up some numbers. Yeah. I mean, and look, Brent Key is a good coach. Like Brent Key knows his stuff, right? Like
I like Brent Key a lot too. I do.
I mean, you're right. Like there's a comment in here already. He was able to flip a kid from Georgia. What was that? Like the first 5-star they've ever signed?
Yeah. It's got to be close.
It has to be close.
I think that Calvin Johnson was a 5-star. He should have been if he wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know if he was or not. but man, like Brent Key has done a great job. Again, comes from the Saban coaching tree. Yep. And a lot of people have been really high on Brent Key. It will be interesting to see if they put it together, and especially if they go over to Ireland because it's going to be prime time. Everyone's paying attention, and they beat Florida State. All of Florida State will not be able to complain anymore. Like their complaints are going to have to go out the window, man. You know what I'm saying?
Everybody says they don't have faith in DJ. I'll be straight up honest with you. I haven't seen enough consistency in Mike Norvell. They even say that I completely trust Florida State yet. I get it. They had a great run last year, but it starts at the top. And you know what I mean? Like I get it. Now I'm not saying Georgia Tech's going to come out here and beat Florida State because I haven't looked into this that much. And look, Georgia Tech has the players. They have the dudes to beat Florida State. They do. And I think the potential upset is there. Look,
you never know
like Missouri.
A fight like that, man. How are you going to respond?
Exactly. And look, this is why I don't do this anymore. I've given Missouri too much credit to get burned in the back end of it. Right. So, and I'm done with Missouri. That's why I always will despise Missouri and say,
sorry, Rob.
If you're a Missouri fan, don't even come to my channel because I'm just going to dog you out. Because I'm tired of being burnt by you. It's kind of the same thing with Florida State. Like I gave Mike Norvell so much credit when he got to Florida State. And then when he played LSU and got dogged out, I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. So look, until he shows me consistency, and then you got turnover in that, you know what I mean, in the locker room and stuff like that. So I don't know, man. I just don't know enough about internally in Florida State to sit there and comfortably be like, yeah, they're going to beat Georgia Tech. You know what I mean? So, like you said, that flight, it's prime time, right? How many times is Georgia Tech going to have this squad together prime time? and you know what I mean. And what is in Dublin, right?
Dublin,
Where's it
yeah.
being played at?
Yeah, Coach Roybal was there last year with Notre Dame, and he even he's talking about it in here. It could be one of those things that you could have hangovers after the trip.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You
So
know,
yeah,
it's
That's
tough.
all I have
Man.
for that.
That's tough. So it's like, to me, yeah. Look, I don't know. I'm a fan of Big Dave. I'm a fan of DJU. I think that I've said this a bunch of times. I think the problem at Clemson is not quarterbacks. I think it's Dabo Swinney and the offensive line and the lack of receiving talent that they've had. I would also tell you that I think that if there's a weakness on this football team, there's a little bit of one on the O-line. I'm not as worried about that at Florida State, but their receiving room is very unproven. They've got a couple of talented guys. They don't have anybody like they had last year or the year before. They don't. So my concern for DJU and for Florida State would be, they didn't exactly hit the cupboard for him the way that they had it loaded up for Jordan Travis. So he could end up getting, blamed for a lot of this stuff because everybody seems to be quick to jump on the let's blame DJU train. He was a lot better. Look, Oregon State was pretty good. Let's not act like they were as loaded as they were at Clemson ever, and he looked really good last year. He learned to read a defense. That should be helpful for him. In the end, I do think that Georgia Tech this is one of those tough outs, man. You overlooked him even a little bit, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. So I think it's going to be a really good game. And I do think that they would go after Herbie's throat if they lose. So
yeah, well, and here's the next part too, is like, if we really look at this from a standpoint, like you would think this offense from a Florida State side, they should thrive because Georgia Tech is not returning a whole lot, right? Their defense was not very good last year. They've lost it. I think they only returned like 54% productivity back, or right in the 50s. This should be one of those games, right, where Florida State should roll pretty smooth on offense. Now, I don't know what their defense looks like. Right? Like they lost some heavy hitters on defense. You look Verse gone, right?
I think they did pretty good in the D-line area. I think they're going to be pretty good, but I don't know what they are the rest of the way. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And so that's the next point. Is it going to be a shootout or is Florida State just going to kind of roll through because Georgia Tech doesn't have the defense? Now, if Georgia Tech hangs and even beats them, whoa. And it is week 0 too. So the first week's always weird. It's always weird. People don't have the same film. Teams are new now. It's weird,
So beat Clemson last year, week 0.
100.
And if there's one thing, and I'm not trying to knock Norvell at all, or I'm not trying to knock this dude at all. They don't have a top 10 recruiting class. I don't believe he's had one there since he's been at Florida State. It's been hovering around 15 to 19. So Florida State doesn't exactly have world beaters here. So that's another reason why, like I said, the inconsistency for me comes from that as well. So yeah, and Haynes King, he can ball.
If you're focusing solely on, I understood him going heavy in the portal that first year whenever he was coming off of 2 subpar years, he probably had to. But the fact that you've continued to go back to that is a little sketchy if you're Mike Norvell. You got to build through high school recruiting. If you don't, and they keep talking about how great their culture is there, and I don't understand it. Your culture is so great that everybody's split on the Orange Bowl. Bobby Bowden's flipping in his grave that they didn't care about the Orange Bowl, and Georgia in the Orange Bowl at that.
That was embarrassing.
It was.
If I'm a Florida State fan, that was just, I don't know. That was not good, but
63-3,
man. It's not a good thing.
Well, and, you look at like with Florida State,
Georgia had a lot of guys out there, so yeah.
Well, on Florida State, they lose 13 dudes to the NFL.
Yeah.
Like that is a lot that you got to replace, man. That's a lot you have to replace. So
not to mention
can they do it? That makes sense, I guess, then why you have to heavy hit the portal because you just don't have the underclassmen to step up and fill.
What he's going to do? They knew that quarterback left. They had a third stringer because the second stringer was like,
we watched
my job. I'm out.
We watched.
Yeah,
they're 2 and 3. We're not very good.
I look at the portal as supplemental income. right? You have a deficiency in one spot, like Alabama, our wide receiver, so we go and get Jameson Williams.
Thanks,
Okay,
Matt.
that makes
Mhm.
sense. But when you have to go in the portal and say, we need you to come here and I need you to take over this spot and basically take over the locker room,
Yeah,
you
man.
may have some problems going on a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if
That's
anything
tough.
goes wrong. If something goes wrong,
Yeah.
what do you do then?
Oh,
You
You
know,
can leave
Coach
again.
talked about that on Ty's show that day. So you know that, hey, don't tell me that they have a great culture there, because I don't want to hear it. Not whenever you run off. And even Jay, and we love Jay from Unfair Sports, but Jay was like, well, yeah, but they came back to play for a national championship. So does everybody. So does everybody.
Yeah.
You don't just quit on that. I mean, again, what do you think Coach Bowden would have said about the Orange Bowl and not showing up for the Orange Bowl? That he would, I mean, that was his thing, was the Orange Bowl. So,
well, and it has to go back to like, make it. I get it, right? Like this is a easy two-sided argument here, right? Because you could argue on one side and say,
Sure.
well, is it important anymore because it's not a playoff game? Like, is my NFL career important? Like, I don't want to get hurt. I could see some of the thought process. I agree, but I could see it, right? Like, at the same time, on the other side, like, from, hey, let's just finish the fight because we did this together. It'd be one thing if that team was like 6-5, or 7-5, right? And they make a bowl game, but dude, you went undefeated as a team, finish the fight. Like, don't squander all the work you put in, right? Like, because that's what it is you basically are you're basically saying, well, it doesn't matter everything that we did. You are setting a bad mindset for your future in football. Like, if you're going on, because you are not saying team first, you're saying me first, right?
Yeah.
So then that's the part where I think you could sit there and be like, okay, that's not good, man. Like, again, I understand wanting to be productive, wanting to keep safe your career in the NFL. That's everyone's dream. But I also think there is a mindset because football ends. But one of those things you can learn from this scenario is I worked my butt off. Okay, I did not achieve, or the things did not happen that I thought would happen or that we believed should happen. But that's part of life. So how do you face that going forward? Are you just going to change your mind then and say, well, since I didn't get what I wanted, even though I accomplished all these things, I'm going to say, fuck it, throw in the towel and move on? No, that's not how you do it. You finish. You know what I'm saying? So I just think there's a lot that's being from the coaching side. They maybe miss some points of describing or saying, hey, this is why we should do this together. Right. And then going back to maybe some of the things of that culture mindset. So
going to Nelio's comment up there, or is that it says the day when players have to sign contracts when they enter or join a program that will end players opting out of bowl game. So here's the thing that has started this year, though. There is kind of a comp to that because I believe it was Quinn Ewers. There was a couple big names that had to sign NIL deals stating that they will have to play the full season, including the bowl game, no matter what it is, in order to receive their full NIL contract, and especially if it goes into the next season, or they can be dropped. So this is starting to become a thing now to where, these, I don't know if you guys have seen, but we've had like 4 or 5 players sign these private jet deals now.
Yeah.
I believe all of those are stating that all games must be played in those contracts, if I read that right. So, I mean, I think you're going to start seeing a little bit more of that. But no, I can't agree with you more on that, man. Like, I hate seeing some of these guys sit out, man, knowing that, like, I get it. If it doesn't mean it, like you're 7-5 and whatever, but when you're talking about like an Orange Bowl, whatever it may be, come on, guys.
Hey, it's Georgia. They just won this back-to-back national championships too. They won 29 games in a row. Go, you know what? You want to complain about not getting in the playoff? Go and beat Georgia, or go and put up a fight to Georgia. At least we'll listen more. When you do what you do and go out there and lay an egg like that and roll over, nobody wants to hear your shit anymore. And they're still talking. That's why it's still going on. So it's
it's a bummer too, because here's the thing about Florida State.
It was absolutely soft, Jimmy Lee. You're right.
It is like this is why it's somewhat sad. As we look at Florida State from a historic standpoint, and we look at what they have done in the past, and the coach especially with Bobby Bowden, what he was able to achieve and
Fan of the
accomplish.
program, dude. I am a
I
fan
mean,
of the program.
Me too, man. We all know the war chant, right? Like all of us used to watch the video game, and every
Including,
single
like,
one of us,
Peter
right?
Ward
Like,
and Charlie Ward and guys like that. Those dudes
yeah,
were
I mean,
sick, you know?
100%, dude. I mean, you look at that back in the day, and you're like, man, Florida State's like kind of iconic, right? But
Yeah,
to
for sure.
to change, to not have, I guess, the finishing touch that they should have had, especially with what they accomplished, and they hadn't accomplished in so
Have a
long.
little more pride than that, man. You're Florida State.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
the thing, man. Like, it doesn't set a good
Yeah.
precedent for the future. So,
Well,
you know,
what's your take on this? Do you think, and I think this is a humongous way to look at this as well. You know, a lot of people will say Florida State gave up, right? They gave up. Okay, what happens next season if these bowl committees go, well, why would we bring them in if they're not going to put their players on the field?
100.
Maybe they don't see as good of a bowl game if they don't make the playoffs.
Well,
You know what I mean?
and
Like,
that's
that's a lot of
common.
money.
that is a lot of money, and I think that's fair too, man. To say like, hey, you know, like, if you're going to come in, we're going to put this money in for these bowl games, right? Like, you guys have to put the best product on the field, right? Especially,
Yeah, exactly.
what's interesting, you bring that up, John, because now with the way, you know, everything is being monetized, like, you almost run into a liability, right? It's the same thing as a product now. Like, right?
Sure.
When as soon as you monetize it, it becomes a product, right?
It's always been
And
a
if your
product.
product, well, I mean, I get it, but I mean, like, it has way more implications now, because
Sure.
there's a lot more money flowing through this factor, instead of just like a
Bulls can
program,
step up and pay a little more too to them players. I get, yeah.
right? So I think that's a really good perspective to think about going forward, is like, hey, to make these bowl games continue to be competitive, there probably needs to be some implications in place.
Yeah.
And will there be, to make sure that we get the best product on the field for what we're paying?
Exactly.
Fair question. It's a fair question, man.
You know?
I'm with you on that. Not a ton of other huge games. I think Montana State's going to go into Albuquerque and beat the brakes off of UNM. New Mexico losing that one. I don't know that that's the case necessarily, but it could be. New Mexico sucks. SMU at Nevada could be a pretty good game.
SMU will be fun to watch.
I was a New Mexico State guy. I got my undergrad at New Mexico State, so that's, you know.
I lived there for a little while, so I have to almost back them up a little bit, but it's hard, bro.
Yeah.
Wow.
That
Didn't
the local shit that they do in Albuquerque? No.
Their head coach bounced, didn't he?
Who's that?
Did
New
he bounce?
Mexico?
They bounced him.
Yeah.
Well, did they bounce him, or did he leave? I thought he
Are
went
you talking
somewhere.
the Lobos or Montana State?
New Mexico, yeah. New Mexico State.
Yeah, they fired him. No, they
Oh,
fired him.
damn, man. I thought he was a decent coach too,
And
man.
he struggled, though, man. He wasn't getting it done. Delaware State at Hawaii, SMU at Nevada. Those are the rest of those Saturday games. Look, it starts early and often, though, next week. You've got some big games from Thursday on. You know, I would say that Thursday you got NC State starting off against Western Carolina. Not a tough game, but then Murray State at Mizzou, number 11 Mizzou. That's really hard to see. Lindenwood at Kansas as well on Thursday night. Let's see, Utah opening up against Southern Utah. That'll all be on ESPN. Friday night, Oklahoma opening their season, hosting Temple next week. You also have Elon at Duke, Western Michigan at Wisconsin, and TCU at Stanford. So that's a couple of big games. Look, the big one for me is that morning game. One of the big ones. There's a couple of big games on that Saturday, though, week one. Love the Clemson Georgia matchup. I'm not as high on Clemson as a lot of people are. Love that matchup, though. It's an early game. A lot of people are giving West Virginia a lot of love in this Penn State game. I'm not sure that I'm ready to do that. Not sure I'm ready to do that, right? I do like West Virginia. I like Garrett Green. I don't think they're beating Penn State. I don't care if it's at home. Who the other one? Well, you've got a few, but the biggest one, obviously, being it's the game day game. Notre Dame on the road, Texas A&M.
Yeah,
fun.
Well, you also got, did you say Miami, Florida?
Miami, Florida. Oh yeah.
Huge.
I think that's
Huge,
1-1A. The 1-1A, yeah. Because listen,
Who wins that?
we can kind of yeah, we can close on this. We'll close on this because we're starting to get into week 1. But let's talk about this. Everybody's talking about Billy being in trouble. I don't know how much you could expect Billy to win this year at Florida with that schedule. But if you're Miami and you're Mario Cristobal and you don't win that game, who's in more trouble? Now who's in more trouble? And it isn't a swamp. You know that's a tough place to play.
Dude.
Does Mario get on the hot seat if that doesn't work out?
I personally think he's already on it. Like,
yeah.
I'm not saying it's hot, but I think it's really warm. And I think coming into this season, look, you're at worst expected to be third in the ACC. And with that pathetic schedule that they have, by the way, if you finish the season below 9-3, if you're 8-4, it's got to get real damn hot in that room, because that means you're losing to teams you should not be losing to.
Championship game with that schedule and Cam Ward and everything else they have.
That's Billy Napier. He needs a hall pass for 2 years. Like, look, we need to close our eyes and just say, let's move on past these next 2 years and let's see what he's got the following year. That probably won't happen, unfortunately, because it's the SEC, and who knows? Somebody else is gonna have that schedule in 3 years. It may not be that exact schedule, but it's going to be brutal.
Well, does DJ Lagway stay around if you don't give him that pass? You know, because he's not starting them. I think if they comes apart pretty early for Florida, you're going to start seeing DJ Lagway.
He's gone.
That may be the only thing, right?
Yeah.
But he would leave with Billy, right? He's not going to hang around. I think that saves him. If he gets to 5 or 6 wins with that schedule, I don't see why you would. Now, then again, Florida fans are nuts, and they will fire people quick. They usually, Coach, I talked about it the other night. They're 3 years and gone at this school. No more than 4. So we've seen it. We know, and they still think they got Spurrier there for some reason, but they don't. So it's a concern if you're Billy Napier, and particularly if you lose it at home, even though I think everybody would tell you that they're more talented at Miami, which is why it should be more on him and Cristobal if they don't get that done. You don't take a knee and you lose to Georgia Tech last year. Georgia Tech they only had 3 conference wins. It's so nuts, man. I don't know. Jake, where are you at on it?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I do think from a standpoint with Miami, you know, I think Cristobal is definitely on the hot seat. If he loses game 1 to Florida, which is, I'm going to be honest with you, I think Florida is going to win that game. I do. I think Florida, I think there's a lot going on that we don't see behind the scenes with Florida and their locker room. There's been some really positive stuff. I think everybody's at Florida, the coaching staff, the players, they're sick of hearing about their schedule being so tough. They're sick of hearing that they're not good enough. You put that sort of energy into a locker room that already, you got to look at it this way too. This year, they're doing a good job of buying into Napier. You can feel that, right? I mean, yeah, they had some losses in the portal. It's a bummer, but I think those were necessary to get them to a place where that team comes together, because Napier won, right? He won with University of Louisiana Monroe. Like, those teams bought into what he was doing.
Sunbelt Billy.
I think you would assume that's in. There's not a, with all these teams that we talk about, right? Every single one that we go through and everyone talks about all the time. One of the biggest things that people don't put enough credit on is buy into the philosophy, buy into the mindset, and buy in together, right? Like that bond, that play for each other, that remember the Titans feel, that's real. That's a real thing. That defines teams winning and losing. That defines teams winning championships. Washington made it to where they made it to, not because of all these little amazing players or all this stuff. Yes, they had great players. Yes, they had good schemes. But that buy-in, that brotherhood buy-in, that buy-in to the message, that's what made them win. Like, because when you get into tough, adverse situations, all that other stuff goes out the window. You have to be able to lock in together and fight through the storm, right? You have to face the storm and go through it.
Sure.
So
I'm not
I think
positive that Florida's just going to go out there and lay a complete egg, man. Some of these
No.
games are winnable, right? They
But
are.
But what I'm saying though is I think there is buy-in to Billy Napier's culture that wasn't there before.
Sure.
And I think when you face adversity with the correct buy-in, you can have a very dangerous animal that's always being put out there and being teased all the time and stabbed through the gate until you open the gate and it rips everyone's head off, right? Not saying Florida's going to come out and rip everyone's head off, but I do think Florida is a dangerous team. I think you give them enough locker room material, they're a dangerous team. And I think they're going to beat Miami.
They added a lot on that defense too. As much as people want to talk about Lagway and their offense and all that kind of stuff, it really wasn't about the offense last year either. They had a guy that came in and played really good football at the quarterback position. He's coming back. They're not hurting there. The big thing for them was they had a really young a defensive coordinator. They brought in a guy to coordinate him, apparently. So it looks like they've added some guys in the trenches that are probably going to be helpful. I'm higher on Florida than a lot of people are, but I'm not high on Mario. I don't think that Mario has really ever shown us. You go into the shoe and beat Ohio State while you're at Oregon, and you turn around and lose to Arizona, who had one win. It just doesn't. A lot of silly stuff that's gone on in his tenure. He can recruit his ass off. We know that. But at some point, you've got to be a little better at the X's and O's. I think you should be in trouble if you don't go in there and take care of business there. And at the very least, look, you lose that game, it's one thing, but I think you better win the ACC after that if you do.
Yeah, I love hearing the talk of like, it's not just about the head coach, right? It's the perspective of everything. It comes down to recruiting, developing, all this from top to bottom. And I hate to come back to Alabama here, but I think that's why it's so damn important that Alabama fended off USC and kept Courtney Morgan as the general manager at Alabama, because his job is to construct the organization from top to bottom that gels together along with that team from top to bottom, right? And when he received that raise to $825,000, I believe it was today or yesterday, and USC was supposedly giving this dude over $1 million, and he was like, "Nah, I'm good. To stay here." I think we're going to start seeing more of that, because it seems like you said, the camaraderie, all that stuff, it matters way more than somebody like me. I don't know that because I didn't play college football, bro. I played high school. You know what I mean? So I don't know the ins and outs like that, but I can only imagine how important it is for 119 assistants plus a head coach. And then how many we're looking at, what in the future, 105 scholarship players, possibly with possibility of no walk-ons. And this is all supposed to just magically gel together, right? So then you look at the general manager and what he's supposed to do. And I think the general managers across the entire country, because there's a lot of teams that don't even have one, I think you're going to start seeing the importance of that position. And I think you're going to start seeing that leak into the SEC teams, you know what I mean, and how that's constructed and how they're going to start building these teams up. Because, man, I have to say, Courtney Morgan, I had no idea who the dude was. But when I did research on him and why he was brought over to Tuscaloosa, because he told the story, if you guys watched the interview of essentially Kalen DeBoer got hired, right? Got on the plane to Tuscaloosa, and he told Courtney Morgan, "We're going to Tuscaloosa." Did not even offer him the job yet. He just said, "You're coming with me." They landed, got in the office, and said, "Whatever you want, let me know. You're staying here."
Yeah. And I love how you said that, right? Because you have this guy in a position, because you are seeing how important it is. You look at Curtis Lofton's doing an amazing job of that at Oklahoma. Okay. Curtis Lofton is impressive, and they're doing it in a very structured way, right? They took the NFL model and they said, how can we make this model work for recruiting, right? How do we make this model work for what we want to do and produce, the buy-in from a culture standpoint, but also from the business side. Okay. Yeah. Curtis Lofton's done a great job of that. You look at Courtney Morgan with what he does, and we talk about all the time with even recruiting, and this speaks, man, highly of Courtney Morgan. Also speaks highly of Kalen DeBoer. But you look at what Courtney Morgan looks at, and everybody says all the time, they're like, well, kids are just doing it for the money. They're just doing it for the money, right? You get $1 million offer $1 million a year to go and do the same thing that you're doing with a legendary program. Now, I won't say it's as legendary as Alabama, but it's close. USC's close. and you say no, one of the things that preaches to all these recruits out there, one of the things that shows to all these players' parents, to the players on your roster, to your coaches around you, is you say, I believe in what Courtney Morgan always says, transformational over transactional, right?
Exactly.
He quotes that a lot. And what it comes down to is transformational means it's all about the relationships first. And Courtney talks a lot in his interviews about his relationship and what his belief in Kalen DeBoer. So it starts with what you have and you come in and bring as a person from the head, right, to all the other aspects down. Okay. And that's what creates a winning culture. I think you have a very similar mentality in that. And this is why I keep saying it all the time, is I think you have that very same mentality in Brent Venables. Brent Venables is like, he preaches his culture is impressive. He's creating a warrior culture. Okay. He is creating a Spartan brotherhood culture. Like, you go watch 300,
Sparta.
Like straight up, that's Brent Venables is like Leonidas. That's how you look at him, right? He has that sort of persona. Okay. And if these coaches keep doing it this way, I'm going to be honest with you, I think Dan Lanning has a little bit of that too. I think Dan Lanning has a
I'm
very
ready for him to do something else though too. I'm ready for him to like win some of these important games too.
Dude, don't be surprised if that happens this year.
It should.
Like, I'm going to be straight with you.
Lately, that
Very
much as these
dangerous, bro.
guys want to talk in the Big Ten about how the West Coast teams aren't ready for the way they play out there, they're also not ready for the way that that these West Coast offenses are going to go out there and put up points. They haven't had to deal with that. They've dealt with it once a year for a long time.
And here's where I give Lincoln Riley credit, because he brings in D'Antone Lynn. D'Antone Lynn took a UCLA defense ranked in like the 80s or 90s and got them number 11 in the nation in 1 year. One year.
I think that the staff that they brought in on that defensive side, you can talk about Matt Ince in that conversation as well.
Well, dude,
this is a guy that's a back-to-back national champion winner as a head coach and a defensive guy.
Defensive
at
guru.
Yeah, a guru. And
did you see his average of points, Jason?
One of the better athletic directors in the country, period. There's a reason why
she's amazing.
She's unbelievably good. I think that she went and hired Lincoln's replacement. I think that happened.
Yeah, I think if Lincoln,
they've got a light enough schedule that they should get to 9 or 10 wins at worst. They really should. I don't know that they will.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to see what their depth looks like. Now, I have a different take. Like, I think that Miller Moss he was able to give really good results. He's
not going to get off script as much as Caleb did.
No, yeah, 100%. I think he proved it in like the numbers he put up, right? But it'll be interesting. But that's where you look at like with what they did there and how they found these key. Again, you know who orchestrates all these things though is either you have a really good head coach who understands this, but for the most part, it's your general manager, right? Courtney Morgan's what connected Alabama's defense. And I think like it's funny because you bring up Jen Cohen and Jen's ability to find talent. She found Kalen DeBoer, brings him to Washington. She gets on board with Courtney Morgan. She is the athletic director at that time when all this goes down. Jen Cohen knows what she's doing. She's a great asset to have to find talent until you get the right people in place. Now, that's probably one thing where USC is like, okay, what's in place? I think the defensive staff is.
SC went and got Lincoln instead of the guy right up the road, Kalen DeBoer, that was killing it.
But I don't think he would have left for SC, dude. I'm gonna be honest with you. I do not think he would have left for SC.
My big thing with Lincoln, and
Fresno? You wouldn't have left Fresno for SC?
Yeah, 100%. I'm saying Washington.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They got hired the same year, so it's
100. Yep, 100.
Yeah,
I need to see this guy put up better recruiting classes than what I've seen from USC for me to give him a whole lot of credit.
Go in California. You know what? Go down and win at Crenshaw High School. Get those guys before you go recruiting Georgia so much.
Yeah.
I mean, some of our talent, we have 6 guys out of California and Alabama, and one of them, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, was out of his backyard. It was right down the road from LA. Like, it was just one of those things where it's mind-boggling. Like, I try not to harp on this guy too much, but it comes to a point in time to, in my opinion, guys, I'm a firm believer in your contract should speak to what you are doing. And if you're making $11 million a year, unlimited use of a jet, you got a $6 million home bought for you, and you're going 7-5, and your recruiting classes are not in the top 10, we got problems. Like, because you got to produce
pull the trigger
that
fast there too. They're not going to wait.
Well, and that's
they
that's what I think is going to be interesting this season with with Lincoln Riley, is like, if because he does have the defensive staff to produce which should produce crazy results. I mean, they really should. Like, right? Like, USC is still USC. They still recruit top players. There's still top players in that roster. But the thing is if the defensive staff is productive, but they still run into the situation where they're not achieving what they probably should achieve, then at that point, that's not the defensive staff. You're probably going down a route of the offensive coach, right? And the head coach. And that's where you're as offensive coach, because that's what he focuses on. But that's where you start to say, okay, like, how much more time do we give you? Right? Like, we can't sit in the Big Ten and run into this result like year one of not achieving what we should, especially if we don't already have the recruiting class we need. Then maybe we got to find a result quicker, right? So it's going to be that's going to be one interesting side of storyline with SC as we watch them through the season. Like, 100%, it's like, how long do they wait, right? And do they produce results?
They can't do what they did last year. I don't think they will. But I mean, I love Lynn, right? It was literally the biggest turnaround in history for when you're talking about I think it was PFF rankings for defenses, right? So I think it was like 91st or something like that, all the way to almost inside the top 10. That's great. That's great when you can coach that, but it doesn't mean you're going to walk into USC and do that. So I need to see how it looks as a whole. It's kind of like me as an Alabama fan with Kane Womack. I love everything I'm seeing. You know what I mean? From what I can watch and practice and see and listen to and all, it sounds great. But I'm a firm believer in seeing it on the field. Okay, now we're a little bit different here. I have some backing to this, but until I see it, I just, man, because I didn't see it at Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley. When they brought in Alex Grinch from Ohio State, you know what I mean? It just, in my opinion, Lincoln Riley's biggest thing was he just held on to Alex Grinch too damn long. Like, he just refused to get rid of him. And I think it could possibly cost him this job, because now you're going into the Big Ten. Are we going to sit here and say that USC is going to go 11-1 and 10-2 in the Big Ten in year one with a brand new quarterback?
They have an easier schedule than a lot of the teams in the Big Ten do. I mean, they don't have to get Oregon. They don't have to get they're not up against Oregon. They're not getting Ohio State. They do get Penn State. It's at home. They play Michigan on the road, and I think they lose that game. But theoretically, it's early enough in the year. Maybe you catch them at the right time. But they're also playing LSU. Yeah, I don't really know that they get 10 wins. I guess you could see them possibly winning the LSU game because we don't know what LSU is on defense.
It's true.
Trash, And
they did the same thing. They had to bring it now. They have a new defense coordinator. Everything looks new for them. They don't have Jaden Daniels. So, and the one thing I'll give LSU is I trust Nussmeier because I've seen Nussmeier. He's been in the system long enough to understand what you're going to expect out of him. I don't know enough about Moss, right? So, but that's just because I'm not a USC fan and I don't follow this guy. But at the end of the day, the results have to speak for themselves. And it's hard for me to stomach watching Dan Lanning make at the time $4.5 million a year and getting 10 wins 2 seasons in a row. And I'm watching somebody make $11 million a year.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean? And then they get 7 wins. I mean, it's just like I said, I think the contract, if you're making the money, man, it's just like players. If you're paid this big NIL deal, you better put the damn results on the field. Like, come on now.
Yeah. Well, 100%. And I think that's what's going to be. I think you get some fun storylines to watch with USC, right? Especially with like Dan Lanning and what there is, potentially to happen.
Man.
I mean, dude, I'm going to be honest. He brought in a couple other coaches to help this year. I mean, there's going to be some. I think he's done a phenomenal job. I really do. I have a lot of props to Dan Lanning. And then, but then the Lincoln Riley side with SC.
I just think he also has a little bit to answer for in these big games. You know, you're 0-3 against Washington. You know, I think he was 1-2 or 1-1 against Utah, and so you know, and actually they lost a game at home to Oregon State before DJU got there.
Yeah,
you know, he's lost some games that you don't want to see him lose. You know.
Yeah, but I mean, what are you looking at for Dan? What year is this for him at Oregon?
3. This is year 3 because he got there.
So
this is year 3 for Riley as well.
That's right, and so I think that's year 3 should be
definitely in
pretty typical
right now. Yeah,
it's typically a telltale sign of, okay, what do you have, and now do you produce, right? Because you should have, your culture should be implemented by then. You're in the right place, right? And at this point, you should have some of the players, the buy-in should be there. You know what coaching staff you have. You know how you should look. You should definitely be winning. That's why if Oregon doesn't make that jump, then you're like, okay, what's missing? You're right.
Yep.
But I do feel like they make that jump. Now USC is the biggest question mark. I think they made some off-season changes that were pretty phenomenal, but is it enough?
Yeah.
You know,
right.
It's just
season.
It is. It's kind of wild all over. Here's one thing I'll go back with Alabama too, is I'll say this, is that Alabama, with what they have defensively, I do think that, you know, there's a lot of people are like, hey man, I'm really worried. I'm worried from this standpoint, right? Like there's constantly the fear. I do feel like, especially because I'm probably going to do a recap here soon, if not tonight or tomorrow, of fall ball. Because everyone needs to know, like, we got to talk about it. Like, fall ball is over. We're in game prep now.
Exactly.
Like, we are 2 weeks out. We are in game prep. So everything has changed. All that pad thumping, all that craziness, that stuff kind of goes away. We're starting to get into the fine-tuned details of game plan, right? Like, and it's fun. This is where it gets exciting, right? Like, okay, we've done all the right things. We found all the right, we hope we found all the right pieces to fit where we want to go starting game 1, and we're in game prep. So it's fun to look at from Alabama's standpoint, like, all right, this defense that's been so dominant for so long, is it going to be the same? And I'll tell you, I feel very confident that we are going to see a electric defense on the field. You know, I mean, again, it's one of those things where you could say the same thing about Oklahoma.
Doing some hot taking in here today. Here we go.
Oh yeah.
It's exciting stuff, man. I'm ready to. I just so ready. This seems like it was the longest off season ever. It really does. It does. It was really one of those times. But guys, let everybody know how to find you. We're gonna get out of here and get some get ready. We're gonna be back in the morning, obviously, here on Rise and Shine College Football. We'll talk a little bit about the Michael Fasuzi thing. We will be, and I would definitely go on with Jay and Coop if they ask me to, but we try not to step on each other. I know they were already planning to go live. So if they ask me to go on, I'd love to talk about it. I think it's great for Oklahoma to get Michael Fasuzi, but we'll talk about it a little bit in the morning as well. But hey, Jonathan, thanks for coming in and joining us, man. It's good to have you on the show. Tell everybody how to find you.
Pretty simple, at College FB Lewis on Twitter, or X, sorry. And then Bama Talk with John on YouTube.
Okay.
Love it. That's good stuff. You guys check out John's channel. It's really good stuff, man. I was just on the other day doing a video, John, and it was John does awesome work. So appreciate you, John, for having me on, just like you, Jason, you know, and
same
for me, right? Like you can find me right down here at Coach J Mayer. It's all at Coach _J Mayer. It's all capital letters. And then set the tone. Yeah. Set the tone, college football. If you haven't come and join. Appreciate you guys. Like, I would very much appreciate to hit 500 within the next 2 weeks. That'd be awesome. So we're going to start rolling out some great content because I'm back from vacation, everybody. Yay. Now to get after it hardcore. So appreciate you guys a ton joining and hanging out with us tonight, everybody.
Yep. Yeah, and thanks a lot again for guys for coming in. We'll be back here in the morning. As I said, guys, if you hadn't hit that like button, we've had over 500 viewers across these channels. Make sure you're hitting the like button. There's a lot of ways that you can support these channels. Make sure you get over there to Jonathan's shows, get over there to Coach's show as well. Hey, make sure you're subscribing. It helps a lot with us, to get in there. It helps that algorithm get spurred. If you just make sure you hit the like button, you could jump in there and get some of that horns merch, that horns down merch at hofmedia.us/pod-merch. Yeah, we've got the coach's favorite saying, which is actually really funny. So we'll throw that up there real quick.
You know what, guys? In a nice way, fuck y'all. We don't give a shit.
Oh yeah, dude.
Coach, that's my favorite
That's
thing.
ridiculous. That's
Dude, that was hilarious. Thank you, Coach Royball.
They were busting his chops about Notre Dame that day.
Dude, that was epic. Bro. I'm so glad you have that up, man. I'm so glad you have that now. I hope you play that every show.
Love me some Coach Royball, man. We do.
Oh,
that was hilarious.
Feel better, Coach. Definitely. You guys can also you can support the program by trying out Mint Mobile and saving money on your wireless. Try mintmobile.com/HOF. You can get 3 months on the nation's largest 5G network for just $45. That's $15 a month. You don't even have to switch phones. You get an actual electronic SIM card. You can try it with the phone service you have and, save money. I'm saving almost $2,000 for the year by switching over the 2 phones I have to Mint Mobile. Give it a shot. You'll thank me later. The free way, just hit the freaking like button or the dislike button. As long as you are, a little engagement with the show, we appreciate it. Everybody that said, everybody, yeah, in a nice way. I love it.
Nice way.
That's the funny part. In a nice way. But yeah,
that's so good.
We appreciate everybody so much for coming in. I appreciate my guys for coming in again. As we said, we will definitely see you guys on the next one. See you in the morning, by the way. Come on.